gang, gang. Ooh, ice cream so good. Yes, popcorn, gang, gang. Fire, gang, pop, amazing. Ooh.
Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. I'm going to do this one for the second story of the night. Obviously, Hollywood is horrible. Everybody hates it. And I'm glad I hope they lose so much money. I'm cheering in the demise of Hollywood. I really am, because they do hate us and I hate them right back. But this is, I think, a little bit more serious topic. So far, Russia pretty much says we're doing fine. We're going to keep chugging along. Biden has now sent over cluster weapons because they're running out of ammo to send them, which means the United States doesn't have any ammo left, which means if China's sitting there over there rubbing their hands, looking at that little island off their coast, probably going to make a move on that soon. And Biden's called up the U.S. military reserve units to deploy for Ukraine. And why are they doing this? Because we're short. We're short of active duty members. When I first saw the executive order, I was like, oh man, are we heating up? Like are we pulling in reserves to become active, and then are we going forward? But it looks like they're just filling up the ranks a little bit, but they are sending them over to Europe to support the Ukraine move. They say from post-millennial breaking, Biden calls up U.S. military reserve units to deploy to active duty in Europe in Operation Atlantic Resolve. Presidential action posted by the White House on Thursday revealed that President, under his authority as Commander-in-Chief, is calling up U.S. military units to deploy to active duty in Europe under what is being called Operation Atlantic Resolve. Operation Atlantic Resolve is the official name of the unofficial operation supporting the war in Ukraine and is in response to Russia's invasion of the Donbass region. Operation Atlantic Resolve has been funded under the European Deterrence Initiative and is intended thus far to strengthen NATO. The U.S. has military in Eastern Europe, but has not called on Americans to fight or defend in Ukraine. Now, if you see some of the videos that are leaking out from both Ukrainians and the Russian side involved in the conflict, there are people over there that are missing a whole lot of patches and speaking a whole lot of English. So it looks to be probably special forces. There are already Americans over in Ukraine, as far as many of the reports are saying. But because they're not making it official, somehow that means that we're not involved. We're just sending stuff over there. The problem is if they do actually put boots on ground and then, Russia ends up ending the lives of some of these young guys, I think that makes it go hot. And if it goes hot, it goes bad. And the truth is, I think Russia has prepared for many years for this. And so many people call me an apologist, but the truth is, I think they just planned ahead before they made this move, and they were ready with ammunition. They were ready with everything. They were ready with having spoken to China. They were ready for the sanctions that would come against them, and so far they're doing fine. As a matter of fact, dare I say, they're thriving a lot better than Europe is. It doesn't mean I'm an apologist. It just means you're paying attention to what's going on, and things are not doing well for Ukraine. He says his official declaration said, I hereby determine it is necessary to augment the active armed forces of the United States for the effective conduct of Operation Atlantic Resolve and in and around the United States European Command's area of responsibility. As such, he authorized the ordering of any active duty units of the Coast Guard to serve as a unit of the Selected Reserve. The Selected Reserve is the most readily available group of Army Reserve soldiers, according to the U.S. military. All members of the Selective Reserve can be mobilized in the event that emergency arises and they are called upon to do so. In furtherance of this operation, under the stated authority, I hereby authorize the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security, with respect to the Coast Guard when it is not operating as a service in the Navy under their respective jurisdictions, in order to active duty any units and any individual members not assigned to a unit organized to serve as a unit of Selected Reserve or any member in the individual ready reserve mobilization category, and designate as essential under regulations prescribed by the Secretary concerned, not to exceed 3,000 total members at any one time, of whom not more than 450 may be members of the individual ready reserve, as they deem necessary. So basically, they're ending them being active duty reserve or reservists and moving them to active duty. President Biden is readying military forces to deploy to Europe. He made the promise to Americans in March 2022. Look, there's so many opinions on this conflict, but I will tell you this. I was in the military. I was in the United States Air Force. I was a law enforcement officer. I was willing to give my life and defend my country. And I signed up and I did active duty. I was in during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So this isn't me being an armchair quarterback. I've been there, done that kind of thing. But for us to go in over something like this, and I visited Ukraine when I did my travels overseas. I have friends in Ukraine. I do not want anything bad to happen to Ukraine, but the point is this war is killing hundreds of thousands of young men. And if you ask me, what do I care more about? That Ukraine owns a block of land, or that Russia owns a block of land, or that 200,000 men die in the battle? We need to sit down to a peace table, because I'm mostly worried about those lives. And that's what concerns me the most about this. But unfortunately, it seems that there's a lot of people that are just fine sending young men off to prove a point. Well, why are we in this shape where we're calling active duty reserves? Well, here's part of it from the Epoch Times. In depth, military families no longer want their children to enlist. They say more than 24 military service members reached out to the Epoch Times, or maybe it's pronounced Epic Times. I bet that's it, Epic Times. Saying they're discouraging their children from donning the uniform. This marks the end of a legacy for some families and a tough decision for all. Chris Collins served in the Coast Guard for nearly 12 years before getting kicked out in 2022 for refusing the jab. And he said he now plans to steer his kids away from joining the military. He said it has a lot to do with distrust and the current culture. I actually convinced my brother to join shortly after he left high school, Mr. Collins said. He picked the Air Force as his branch, and I regret the decision to encourage him to join because it did not work out well for him. He and his brother shared many of the same concerns, which created distrust in the military. The jab was a huge thing for me, he said. The highest ups of military leadership, the people I once trusted to have my best interests in mind, flat out ignored everything I said in opposition to taking it. As a result, he was forced to decide to take it or leave over a decade of service behind, which means he walked away. I think you can start retiring at 15 years and get some money, and 20 years. It used to be at 20 years you get full pension, but now I think it's half because, the government. So he had to walk away over part of his retirement plan. One of the primary reasons he joined the Coast Guard was for the camaraderie, Mr. Collins said. I didn't think I would find that from any other job. I was once part of the Coast Guard that harped on being family, always being there for each other, but I became inconvenient when I tried to get religious accommodation for the jab. He said, adding that he learned very quickly what the higher-ups in the Coast Guard were all about, and the whole family atmosphere that was promoted to me early on was just a facade. While he doesn't blame his immediate leadership for the abbreviated career, he said they didn't stand up against the mandates. Instead, they deferred to the higher-ups all the way until the end, admitting it was all wrong while signing my discharge paperwork while doing nothing to stand up against it. I think that's a big part of it, too, is that, when you are in the military, because, again, I was in the military, when you're told to do something, you do it, period, end of statement. But you have to have the confidence that they have your best interest at heart. You look at what's going on in this conflict. There's a lot of young men that are wandering into fields, stepping on mines and getting their legs blown off and getting shot at, or running out of ammo, or not having any backup, or not having any medics there to help them, or not having any food in some cases. And they're told, well, keep going. Don't turn around now. You have to keep going or we're going to throw you in jail. And this is true on both sides. And what does that do? As a man, you feel like no one has your back. I mean, we feel like that most of our lives anyway. But when you're going in and possibly at any moment losing your life, and they tell you to just go in and do that, so you have to have full faith that your upper ranks have your back. And when you don't anymore, it's game over. It's game over. That's when you get a lot of surrendering, a lot of throwing down weapons and walking away. He said, but even before the mandate, the jab mandate, Mr. Collins held concerns about the decision-making ability of Coast Guard leadership. In the past several years, the Coast Guard developed a lot of deep-rooted problems, he said, citing leadership's prioritization of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The pursuit of these types of policies has really created a toxic environment for anybody that doesn't believe in it. Pushing cultural things like DEI and forcing people to take an experimental jab shows that they don't care about the military, he said, but what it does show you is leadership will push anything to advance their own careers. If you're in a leadership position, you see harm happening to your people in your military, and you're not willing to speak up about it, what good are you, he said. We need people willing to stand up and stop the change in culture to turn the military around. But Mr. Collins believes even then the military may be too far gone already. They go on here further, but you guys get the idea. You know, he talks a little bit more about his personal opinion and how he sees many young people getting damaged by this stuff. To where, you know, it's we used to, in my family, there was pride. My grandfather served. My father served during the 1950s, so I guess that would have been, he was active during the Korean War. I served during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But then as I get older and I see a lot of these conflicts we were in, we didn't need to be, and it was push our ideas down other people's throats. And there are some conflicts we do need to be involved in. But unfortunately, the more you find out, the more you maybe believe that you might have been wrong. And so the pride that you used to take in being a military member, I remember, man, when I came back from Desert Shield, Desert Storm, we had a parade, and we were marching in this parade, and here we are, what we felt was doing right for the country. We were doing what was asked of us by, you know, our president and our commanders, and we were in a parade, and we were being spit at and called names. It's a true story. It was in upstate New York, Utica, New York, because I was stationed at Griffiths Air Force Base. And when you are told to do something and you see the population spitting at you or yelling at you, calling us baby deleters and all this other stuff, and that kind of thing you thought only happened during Vietnam, but no, it still happened when you're going in a parade and you were in a conflict in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. People hate you. But I was still proud to do what I was doing because I felt like I was doing the right thing. But over time, you stop feeling like you're doing the right thing, and especially when you feel like those in the upper command are just trying to be yes men to further their careers, and you know, whatever happens to you, who cares? Go into the meat grinder. And it's the end of your time on this earth, but in the meantime, you know, somebody in the upper ups is getting a pin, you know, popped on their chest because they were a good yes man. I'll leave it with this video. This is Mark Wutan and the TikTok is Air Force Airman Kostenko, AMN, which is usually airman. This is what the recruiter or somebody high up in command, I don't see any pins or stripes, so I don't know his rank. This is what he says about men, and it's specifically white men in the military today.
You know, the only really guidance I'd put out there for them to consider is stop hiring middle-aged white people, especially dudes that are pilots, because honestly, we all think alike too much. And if we're going to be preaching diversity and being inclusive, then for crying out loud, let's back it up with let's make the rhetoric meet the reality.
Yeah, exactly, the rhetoric. Let me ask you something. Some of you guys are former military. Some of you guys have worked other jobs with other men. Let's say you're on a construction site. There's a black dude, there's an Asian dude, there's a Middle Eastern guy, there's a Latino, there's a white guy, and you guys are talking about constructing a building. Does it matter your skin color for your ideas on engineering or the best way to tackle something, or does that come from your personal experience? The best way to tackle a problem, does that come from your training, your background? And when I say background, I don't mean the color of your skin background or where you're from. No, maybe where you're from. Let's say a guy from the Middle East says, hey, we make bridges like this. And the guy from Mexico says, well, we make bridges from that. Got news for you. It still doesn't have anything to do with skin color. It has to do with engineering and lessons learned and mathematics and what you were taught and what you've done before. So to say all white guys think alike is like saying all men think alike, all women think alike, all black guys think alike, all black women think alike. It boils us down to this glob of people. It doesn't account anybody's specialties or their own life lessons or their own intelligence. You know, maybe one guy worked on a farm. Maybe there's a redneck from, I don't know, maybe there's a redneck from Tennessee, and he grew up on a farm here. And maybe there's a cowboy, and he's from Montana, and he grew up on a farm in Montana. Both those guys are white, middle-aged farmers. Do you think they did anything the same? Because a farm out in Montana or a ranch out in Montana, you're not growing veggies in that ground-up granite. I know, I went out there to look for land. And you walk out there into a field, and I could buy 10 acres, and I walked out in the middle of that field, and that ground was as hard as stone. And when you pick it up, it just looked like ground-up granite. It wasn't fertile. There wasn't moist soil. And here I am in Tennessee, and it's Tennessee clay. Man, you go outside and you take a step, and you get a little clay on your shoe, and then you take another step, and now you have 2 layers. I don't know why the clay likes to stick to shoes more than itself. You take 5 steps, and you've got 4 inches of Tennessee clay on the bottom of your shoe. Do you think those guys are anything alike when it comes to ranching or farming or their product? Or no. But their skin color's the same. They both live in the United States. They both are white guys. They're both middle-aged. None of their experiences. Do you think a black gentleman from Texas that, I don't know, lives out in a farm town is the same as some guy that lives in the inner hood? No, of course not. But that's what happens when they do this stuff, when they pull this crap. They're trying to pretend that, oh, well, skin color's different. They must think differently, or they think the same, or whatever. And when you see that, that gives smart men, that gives men that actually care about their situation. That gives men that care about what they're doing with their lives. That gives them pause. And they say, man, that's not for me. Now, will you still get some grunts or maybe some guys that don't have any money or don't have so many brain cells to rub together? Will they still sign up? Sure. I'm sure they will. Will you get certain guys to sign up to go do, dressing in women's clothes and dance around for the other soul? I'm sure you will. But you're not going to get the good men, the stoic men, the strong men, the brave men, the patriotic men. Those men are gone. They're not going to participate in this nonsense. They're going to stay as far away from it as they can. And that's why Biden is now calling active reservists. And I don't know the current number, but I think you guys have seen my other videos I've done. We didn't meet our recruitment goals. All right, we got to drop it down. Let overweight people in. We still didn't meet it. Okay, let people that don't meet the IQ requirements or the testing requirements. We still didn't meet it. Okay, let's let anybody that wants to be a citizen. Still didn't meet it. And they've dropped the standards now for a decade, and they still can't fill the ranks. Because, again, smart people, brave people, they want to be able to count on the person in the foxhole with them. And when this is the priority, instead of saying we need to bring in as many people and get as many people trained on the same level and make sure we're playing on the same team, instead what they're doing is saying, well, the quarterback's white and the linemen are black and the halfback is Latino and the wide rights, they're Asian. That's what we need for a football team to be cohesive, is for everybody to be different. Instead of saying, hey, linemen, white, black, what would be another one? Samoan, Tonkin, some of those big boys out there. Instead of saying, hey, okay, we're linemen. We're gonna step off here, off to the side, and we're all gonna train as linemen. You're built like linemen. You're gonna be a lineman. We're gonna teach you how to be a lineman, and then they're all linemen. Doesn't matter if 5 black dudes show up, white dudes, Tonkins, Hawaiians, Maoris. Doesn't matter. You fit the role. You fit the need. But now what they're saying is like, well, we've already got 2 black linemen. Let's get Asian linemen in there and Native American linemen in there. It's not going to work. That's not how football teams win games, and it's not how militaries win battles. And so no one wants to be a part of it anymore because it's all falling apart. Because of that, I expect to see NATO lose in this conflict, meaning Ukraine will go down as well. I expect to see probably China decide to go for that little island off its coast, and that'll be that. We do not have the manpower, the force, the will, the strength, the intelligence, the training, the ammunition, and just the sheer willpower to get this done because we're focusing on the wrong things. And what is it? Does that mean that America's going to collapse and we're going to fall apart? No. But it does mean we're not going to be the world leader in many things anymore, and we're going to fall back a little bit. It means harder times. It means with the BRICS nations coming up with a gold-backed reserve and more countries starting to trade oil and petroleum in the yuan instead of the U.S. dollar, the dollar's always had a hedge against inflation and the de-dollarization because of the petrodollar. Well, with that getting gone, with the BRICS nations stepping up and more people signing on to that, it means that our dollar is going to become weak. We need to produce something. But the only thing we produce is woke idiots out of Hollywood and universities. We don't make steel mills anymore. We don't even mine the ore. We send everything, we order ore and raw materials from Russia, and then our companies send it over to China for processing, and then it goes to a different part of China or maybe, I don't know, Thailand or something to get processed into something else. And then they send it to Mexico for most of the assembly, and then they send it 95% done, and they snap on a pair of windshield wipers over here in the United States and call it Made in America. The problem with that is that all of our money is outflowing. We're not making anything. That means that our dollar isn't really valued except for petroleum because, if we don't make anything and we're just buying, well, you can't do much with a dollar if it doesn't buy anything here in the United States. What do we sell in the United States? Woke movies that everybody hates. That's about the only export. And so we're going to have some hard times coming ahead. I don't know how far off into the future, but I can tell you now, I think it's going to get pretty rough. We'll have to see. But if this is the way our military is going, and they're needing to call in reservists to help pad the numbers a little bit to send over to active duty in Europe to back everything up for NATO and all the rest of it, it's not a good sign. I have hope for the future. I don't think, it's not a black pill. I don't think things are going to get, devastating. We're not going to be out in the streets, eating out of garbage cans and trying to fry each neighbor's pet like they do in Venezuela. But I will tell you that inflation's not going to stop. The banking's problem's not going to stop. Why? Because of this stuff. Because we've got our priorities in the wrong areas. We got idiots in charge of everything. And you can only lie for so long until the truth finally comes home to roost. And I think we're going to see that in the next few years. So keep your fingers crossed. Plan ahead a little bit. It's going to get real out there, but I think this is the first start. Guys, again, I'm over on Twitter most of the day, in and off, checking for stories and things. So if you want to see what I'm posting about and keep up with what I'm doing and some of the stories I'm looking at, follow me over on Twitter at Bachelor Joker. And if you want to become a supporter, that's what keeps me ad-free. I get emails all the time from ad companies that want me to do reads, and they're going to pay me this and pay me that. I don't do them because you guys watch enough ads as it is over on YouTube. And I have supporters that help keep me afloat when Big Mama YouTube doesn't treat me so nice. And you can do that for $5 a month, less than a cup of coffee over at betterbachelor.locals.com. All right, guys, I will leave it there, and we'll see you in the next one.